Good evening and welcome to Artist Talk on Art, Monday, February 2nd at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm Alex Cohen, Programming Director of Artist Talk on Art. Tonight features artists Stacy Bogdonoff and Teri Figliuzzi. Artist Talk on Art is the world's longest running art forum in art history. Founded in 1974, ATOA has held and recorded over 1,200 events in audio and video featuring more than 9,000 people. All ATOA events are recorded, copyrighted, and then posted to our YouTube channel, Artist Talk on Art 2026. Our recordings are held at Archives of American Art at the Smithsonian Institution, where it comprises their largest collection of audio and video recordings. Please hold your questions and comments until the last part of our 90-minute event and remain muted until that time. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce Stacy Bogdanoff and Teri Figliuzzi, who will be in dialogue. Stacy Bogdanoff is a mixed media artist, often working with fiber and textiles. She creates two and three-dimensional art, always balancing her exploration of media, process, and her thoughts and feelings around home, safety, and shelter. She often includes a short story with each piece. She says, "My work may look abstract to you, but it's full of narrative and story to me." Stacy earned a BFA from Syracuse University and built a successful career as a food entrepreneur before establishing her full-time studio practice. Early in her career, she worked with metal and gold thread, creating jewelry and wearable art. She she later took that interest in weaving, knotting, and threads into her current fine art practice. She is a member of several art organizations and has been a recipient of awards and grants. She is scheduled for two shows this June. Um, and now for Teri. Teri Figliuzzi combines her passion for textiles, color, and alternative processes in her photography to create cyanotypes, lumen prints, and photograms, producing work that emphasizes a touched by hand approach. She uses process and technique exploration are central in her work, often combining weaving, stitching, or gold and silver leafing in finished images. Her botanical images and organic materials as her subject matter bring focus to all stages of life and its fragility. Her images have been shown in many jury shows, national group shows, and have been published in Lenscratch, All About Photo, Art Doc Photo Magazine. She's a member of Soho Photo Gallery in New York City and has a solo show there in 2026. Figliuzzi received her BFA in textile design from Rhode Island School of Design. Soon after graduation, she moved to New York City and enjoyed a long professional career working with architects, specializing in color and materials, and designing woven upholstery fabrics. She began taking courses in alternative processes in 2020. In 2022, she left her commercial position to concentrate full-time on photography, on her art practice. Sorry. And now you're welcome to share your screens.
All right, I'm going to give this my try here. Share. Okay. All right, here we go. Good?
Yes.
And okay, and give me a sec. I want to make sure I'm moving through this right. Okay, I am, so bear with me. Okay, am I good to go? Everyone can hear? I'm getting a thumbs
Yes.
up.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. First of all, thank you all. Special thanks to Alex and to Doug. We just found out we have some geographic similarities. Living part-time upstate, part-time in New York City. And thank you to Maruna and everyone watching for staying in tonight on Zoom instead of being out in the cold. Um, I made a little joke in the front of this because I am not so tech savvy, but it's been quite an adventure digging up images and putting this together. I often start with, I'm going to try to move these. Bear with me for a sec. Okay, got it. I like to start with a joke because that seems like a good plan. And this is the part of the presentation where when anyone says I was born in, I get up and go get snacks or a cup of coffee. So, regardless, I was an arts and crafts kid, and I had a very crafty mother. Um, Here's a picture of her. I don't know exactly when. My sister and I have argued exactly the date, but mom was always doing needlepoint, embroidery. She had a loom. She did Bargello, a word not too many people know today. Macrame. She made my clothes until I was about 12. She was a great seamstress, and then I became a brat and demanded cheap store-bought clothes. She made raya rugs and helped us with Girl Scout projects and textbook covers, and she helped me learn how to make pot holders. And I'm the oldest of four. So when I was about 8 or 10, she taught me how to do cross stitching on that beautiful scraps of white fabric that had blue X's. And it kept me busy while she was, raising a big family. And I only wanted to be like my mom. So eventually I took after her. I started my studio practice making working in metal as Alex said, and I worked with 18 and 22 karat gold. Let me add, well before it cost what it costs today. But it was woven jewelry, and I looped it, I crocheted it. The larger parts that weren't thread, I alloyed my own. I fabricated the tubes and the hooks and the jump rings, and I loved working with the material and working with textile techniques. As is this piece here on the left. Eventually, my work got a little larger and a little more sculptural. This is a sterling silver piece, that I was also heading toward. And, sometimes looking back, tells you, well, obviously, when you look back, it tells you where you've been and also helps make that path clearer. And I realize, and I have realized, but I realize even more now that the work I'm doing today is very linked to that. Not to use funny words, but this piece I'm standing next to, this is a recent photograph. It's the last 3 months or so. And that piece is a sculpture I just made this past winter. It is woven on a stiffened kind of netting, and it's woven with paper covered florist wire and closed up and formed into this tube. So not unlike or not too far away from the jewelry that I had been doing, way back then. My eye has always been drawn to surfaces like rust, peeling paint, layers of signage, cement, barely repaired roadway. I still love a greasy paper bag stepped on, or I don't know, rolled over, or now with the days of melting snow on top of it. I've always been drawn to natural colors and natural textures. I joke that beige is my favorite color. So artists that thrive on bright, beautiful spring colors, I don't understand them. But when I was able to get into my studio more, full time the last 10 years or so, I took that interest in the natural materials and the natural colors. And I'm showing you these two because the one on the left is an early collage. It's only 12 by 12, but obviously you can see what I was working with. There's screening in there, and there's duct tape, and there's actually some piano player paper, the kind that comes on a roll. I haven't seen a piano in 100 years, but it is that. And the piece on the right is only about 3 years old. It's my largest piece. Forgive me, it's a bit squished because of my tech skills, but it's 60 inches tall. But again, the same vocabulary of those of the paper, the textiles, the thread, the textures, and that type of color range. And I am not only looking at things in the street, but I am blessed to, as Doug and I were talking about, and Teri also, to get out of the city on occasion. And I find things when I'm obviously walking in the woods. This is Riverside Park, our woods, but this is a beautiful architectural construction here on the left that I took the picture of. I think the one on the right and in the middle also. And I did make this piece here on the right. It's called Shelter 20. Again, going back to my theme of home, safety, and shelter mixed in with experimenting with media and process. Um, Anyone that knows me, and I know there are a few people here, knows I am a flea market junkie. I was a suburban kid who couldn't wait to get her driver's license. And the week after I got mine, I drove to Englishtown Flea Market. Some of you may know it. And I am already looking forward to a very big flea market in near me up in northwestern Connecticut that opens at the end of March. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I found a box of vintage recording tape, and obviously it's a textile to me. And think I spent $20 on the whole box, and I created a series of pieces. The one on the right that you're looking at now is called Broken Home, and I wove the acetate on a kind of a frame, a scaffold that I made, and then when I went to lift it off, of course, it fell apart because it's extremely slippery. So I grabbed it and I stitched each piece down, and as is the bottom half. And it became the beginning of a series. And all of my work is about, I mean, I call it normal size. It's about 26 to 30 inches wide and 36 to 40 high, somewhere in that range. I currently stretch all my work, which is a bit of debate in the textile world, but it works for me. And that piece became one of 8 pieces that were in a solo person show at a big branch of the New York Public Library. And you can see you can see 6 or 7 of the pieces here. And on the right to each piece, you can see a small framed little story that I wrote to go with each. And again, that joining of the narrative with the with my work helps center me and keep me on track. And it adds to, I think it adds to the whole experience. That's my son looking at it. And this is visual proof that he actually paid a little attention to me once. So here we go. These 2 pieces were also there. The one on the left is titled Gardening. I believe I have Teri to thank for the top dark brown square. I stained the drop cloth with walnut ink that she gave me, and I love it, but it evaporates quickly, and it's very dear but beautiful. The piece on the right is titled Splintered Sound. The gardening story is about the stigma attached to anyone that dare not love gardening, and that person is me. And Splintered Sound is about how hard it is to keep up with contemporary music, which I can't. The piece on the left is titled Asemic, and I learned that the word asemic is I think it's defined as a meaningless language, and it makes me wonder about the miscommunication that we have in the world today and how it all centers around language, and that maybe there are some languages that only 2 people know, and not to be a little crazy, but maybe there are languages that animals share. So that's titled Asemic. And the piece on the right is densely populated. And this is the first piece where I laid a warp and a weft, a woven piece over it. I incorporated that. And all of you know the warp are threads that run the long way on a loom and the weft short way. This is might even be a piece of burlap, but I share it with you because actually there's burlap and netting that I made. And every single place that a thread crosses, I have stitched down. So my work kind of varies between things that go faster, and tasks that go very, very, very slowly. And I like the meditative quality of the slow stitching, and I get to watch Netflix, so that's all fine. And that piece is titled Densely Populated. I going back to the graphic and surface quality that I love, I've started monoprinting onto vintage textiles. And I am making the netting. I am soaking it in printing ink, printer's ink, and I am rolling it. And then I'm piecing these together a bit quilt-like, but broader, obviously, and not as traditional as quilts. The piece on the left is titled Printed Matter. This piece does not have any netting over it, but I surfaced stitched. You can see a little bit of running red thread and some French knots. And the piece on the right is titled But Why? And that does have, as I spoke to you about, the woven pieces laid down and stitched down. I love the accidental quality of dropping a net and seeing wherever it falls. And I love the way the surface obviously changes and it gets integrity as I stitch it down, stitch by stitch. And it also changes color a little, even though it's not colorful. Same here, these two, again, these are all done in the last 2 years. This one on the left is titled Thin Ice. I found a great waxed cotton thread at a sporting goods store, and it made complete sense when I learned about it. It's used to repair tents for campers because obviously it'll keep the water out. I had a funny thing happen with this. When I pull the waxed cotton through the piece on the top, I'm left with a little tiny ball of wax from, being squeezed off of the thread. And I found myself like continuously flicking little tiny white balls of wax like pinheads as I did this piece. And the one on the right here, again, all the things I've been talking about, the orange sections are created literally stitch by stitch. I until it became denser. And one funny thing here is that this vertical rectangle has shown up in a couple pieces of mine, and I realized it's Central Park. It's my geography, and it's in more than one piece. These two, again, this is the end of this batch of work. The one on the left is called Two Hoods. Again, the kind of the stress, the challenge, and the joy of living in a densely populated area, and how we create our neighborhoods with our tasks, our chores, our bank, our food shopping, our family, and our friends, and how so many of our neighborhoods live on top of each other and yet remain bordered. And this piece on the right is titled They Moved to England. And I did it this whole past winter. I have two friends who couldn't take the political situation any longer, so they moved to England. And as I worked on this throughout the whole time of their leaving, I was reminded of the map that we learned when we were kids, of that kind of chunky little roundish square up to the left when we looked at the big continent, and there was England off to the left. So I realized that they moved to England. Details are always fun to look at. So on the left is a detail, and you can see all the tiny stitches, and I am obsessive and ridiculous enough to make them all in the same direction. Not 100%, but almost always. And on the right, I should be a little ashamed. This is the back of a piece. And if anybody is wondering if I am my mother's daughter, this would show that I am not, because my backs are quite messy and hers were shockingly neat. This is the last patch I'm going to show you. There are four of these. I have the printmaking on the right on these two pieces, as you can see, and the weaving, again, that those same materials of stripped percale cotton that I've been playing with. I don't like the word playing, that I've been using amber shellac and again, the silk. These are the other two. And each of these are 20 by 20, and I have come to love this size. And I mean, it's not as small as obviously a 12 by 12, which you see a lot in group shows, but it's not too big and you can move nimbly through it. Here's a picture of well, almost all four. It's like three and a half. And it gives you a sense of them. And I'm actually looking forward to seeing them hung together soon. So that'll be cool. And this is the last bit of work in the studio. These are big-ish weavings. They're about 36 by 36 on 40 by 40, give or take. And they are random, and I skip spaces, and I let each line above or below dictate the next one. And I'm using some pashmina silk. I'm using some binding, seam binding. I'm using craft paper. I'm using pressed leather. I'm using tea stained muslin. There are two here. Funny, I went back to gold. It's beautiful. So we'll see where these two go. A studio shot, cleaner than usual. You can see it on the left, and a work in progress process shot on the right. I often tell people I don't know what a piece of mine is really going to look like until I'm close to finish, because I roll it up so that I can, keep the stitching close to my body, not reach too far in. And this is on a frame. This frame happens to be on legs, but ordinarily it's just a frame that I carry around and lean on a tabletop. And I don't want to get lofty or off subject, but many of us watching tonight are artists, and many of us are feeling the pain of the world that we're living in today. And I only know that I try to keep a few things in front of me when I work, and that I care for my family and friends. I keep an open mind and heart about art and everything. I try to be kind. I try to take a beat and slow down. I have found I need much less social media than I thought. I value each day and make it count, even if I'm just taking a nap or doing the laundry or driving. And to all of us who get rejected from shows, solo shows, group shows, have a bad crit, do not get a residency we hoped for, I just try to circle back and tell all of us to make the art we want to see. And these are my details. My website always needs updating. My Instagram, I'm not on often enough, but I get on there once or twice a week, and I always answer. I can get lost in a reel, but that's not the end of the world. And here's my final slide, and it's fun because I get to introduce my friend Teri. This picture of her was taken about a month ago in front of a piece of mine, and I sign off with my name, which I often sign my pieces with. So thank you, because this was nerve-wracking, but a lot of fun. So I appreciate it. I'll stop the share. Okay, okay, good.
This was excellent. I don't know, Alex, are you on mute?
Hi, is Terry sharing her screen?
Not yet, but I will.
All right, great.
Okay, hold on. Share screen.
Look at us.
I know I'm so bad at this. And then I go to this, and then I go to slideshow, and I go to play from start. Can everybody see that?
No.
Not yet. Now,
Not yet.
not yet.
You
Not
can't
yet.
see it? Oh my goodness.
No, not yet.
Okay, I can see everything. So let me start again.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on my first slide and I press slideshow.
Yeah, you need to press share in the Zoom meeting, the
Oh,
green
I'm so
button. Yeah.
sorry. Okay, so let me start over. Share. So sorry, I'm nervous. I've never done one of these before. So share, and then I go to slideshow,
Yeah.
and then I go to, just a minute,
Yeah. Slideshow, run
and then
from,
play
yeah.
from start, right?
Right.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank
Perfect.
you. Thank you. I want to thank Alex so much and for Doug and for Maruna for running the tech. But I especially want to thank my longtime friend Stacy for asking me to join her tonight. Um, Stacy started a crit group a number of years ago with a group of us from the Textile Study Group of New York. And she kept our spirits high and always laughing. And we continue to be close friends and support each other and share ideas. And I thank her immensely for this evening. Um, so my background is a little bit different. My next slide will show you um, Stacy and I do share that we were both brownies and Girl Scouts. So I grew up making things by hand. I loved my troll dolls and I made all of their clothes. I made beads with my friends and wore funny shoes as a baby and just was always crafty and making things. So after college, where I went to art school, I came to New York City and I've been here ever since. I love New York for its diversity. I love hearing the languages. I love just the just everything about it, how it's so stimulating. So um, after I got established in my career in textiles, I started off in the garment center and then moved on to working with international architects doing color and materials. I started taking night classes at FIT and the International Center of Photography Museum. And there, Cornell Capa, who started the museum, would have these lovely talks with artists. And you can go and pull up a folding chair in this little living room area of the old museum on 94th and 5th. And he would have these famous photographers, and just you were up close with them and they'd share and talk about their work. And I was totally mesmerized by these artists. These are a few of the books I own by these artists. But I did take a lot of beginning classes, darkroom, all the normal things. But the things that I liked the most happened in the 90s, and that was called a Polaroid transfer print. And I do not call this exactly artwork. These were made from my travel photographs, but it was a process where you took a 35 millimeter slide and you put it in this little plastic Vivitar thing. You projected it onto a Polaroid piece of film, which they no longer make. You rip it apart and you adhere it face down onto art paper or photography or fabric. And what I loved about this is that it wasn't a clean, crisp photographic image. It was something very handmade looking. There were some areas where the emulsion didn't stick, so you get that blue area. But I thought all this perfectly imperfect look about it was charming, and it really spoke to me as a textile designer because it did add layers of texture. So, wait a second. I'm sorry, I'm trying to make it go to the next slide. There it is. I pressed the wrong thing, sorry. So this is just more, travel photography using that technique. So about that time, after I was taking all of these classes, my husband and I became parents. So I made 75 birth announcements by hand using this photographic Polaroid transfer process. And that was about the last art project I did by myself when I was raising my kids. We were fortunate enough to have a son also, but he just got a little, from Dwayne Reed photo. He didn't get a handmade thing. I feel really badly, but anyway. So I put away that practice and I got into doing, after I left the architecture firm of doing colors and materials, I joined a large furniture company. We did a lot of contract work, meaning we worked with hotels and banks and universities and did upholstery design, woven upholstery design. And I just loved, I had an actual office, which I think was like this gem of a space that I got to put all of my photographs on the wall, arranged by color, things that I loved, and draw upon inspiration for creating textures. So these are just some of the textures over the years that went on to our various clients' furniture. And I also at that time was just in love with amaryllis flowers. I just loved everything about them. There were so many types of bulbs you could buy, and the winters are long in New York City, so I would buy my bulbs in November, plant them, and I really had these gorgeous flowers blooming through about the end of February, and they really kept me going through the winter. I continued to work full time while raising both kids, raise, collecting little objects outside, little natural objects that I just adored. And there's my family. So as my kids got older, I had a little bit more time on my hands. And many of my projects that I did in my commercial textile job were team oriented. We were working for clients. I was working for my boss. I had restrictions with mills. I had certain yarns I could or couldn't use. I had to meet abrasion tests. And after a while, I thought, well, all this team effort, I really want to kind of replenish my own self. And so I started fooling around with my iPhone, which we all carry in our pockets, this little gem of a computer. And I would take many, many pictures out when I'm in the street and then take a screenshot of all of them together and start putting kind of diptychs together. Now, again, I don't call this art, but it was a process where I could start getting back into what did I want to do with my time now that my family was raised. So these are just snow pictures or cages at a county fair of the chickens. And also, I was lucky enough to be up with where Stacy was for many years and addicted to the same flea market, the Elephant's Trunk in New Milford, and was just charmed by all these scraps of yarn that you could pick up for literally pennies. And I arranged them by color, and I knew I wanted to do something with them, still working full time. And I love the metallics the most. And so I made myself a little frame loom. This is about 12 inches. And I started collecting just, stuff, paper bags, plastic bags, paper corrugated cardboard, scraps of string from the flea market, whatever. And I just started weaving textures. It just made me feel good to create, touch these things. It was so tactile. I love doing the colors and just created lots of textures. This is scraps of yarn, again, the plastic bags. This shredded white paper is many times packages are wrapped and stuffed with that type of shredded plastic. And this is actually some hay from the county fair, from the chicken barn, the poultry barn that I would take along with the other recycled materials and some vintage fabrics. So after I got that kind of out of my system, there was this incredible show at the New York Public Library, the main branch on Fifth Avenue at 42nd Street, and it celebrated the work of Anna Atkins. And I don't, many of you probably know about Anna Atkins. She's supposedly the first woman photographer. She was born in 1799 and She was a naturalist, a botanist, and she did documented seaweeds and all sorts of plant materials using the cyanotype process, which looks like a blueprint. And they had her work downstairs on the main floor in this room that was very dark because you don't want her work to fade. And then upstairs, the curator at that time was Joshua Chang, and he asked 19 contemporary photographers to share their work in response to Anna Atkins' handmade photographic process. And I went there 5 times to see this show. Along with the things on display, there were various artists in the exhibit that would come at lunchtime and speak about their work in front of their artwork. And you could get up close and ask them questions. People like Megan Reppenhoff, Alison Rossiter. These are well-known photographers working in the alternative process field right now. And Joshua Chang, who curated that, has now gone on to curate all the photographs at the Gagosian Gallery. And he just changed my life by making this show. I will say I had no idea that photography could encompass such unique handmade things. So I did the basic thing that everybody was doing with cyanotypes on fabric. I got the chemicals and I did it on fabric and I collected stuff from outside and made it. That's actually my amaryllis stalk after it bloomed in the center and some hosta flowers or whatever. And so this, again, this is not art, but I did get back into making things by hand. So various items that we all can collect out of our yard or the weeds or along the road. But this is the first thing I wanted to take that cyanotype process and try to make it my own. And the only way I knew to make it my own was to engage my textiles, my love of textiles and weave. So I was still working full time and I thought, what do I do? So I took the cyanotype, which was done on a large piece of 300-pound art paper, watercolor paper, and I put it on the office copy machine. I just didn't know about archival paper or printing processes. And I wove it, and at that was about the same point that Stacy had formed this critique group, and they're all much more advanced than I am. And they're going, oh, you need an artist statement, and you need to apply to shows. And I had no idea what I was doing. So I actually applied to a show and I got in, and I thought, oh my God, this is like, I was amazed that somebody actually liked this. I couldn't believe it. And I'm very embarrassed now that it's on copy paper, but it really gave me energy and my Stacy's Crit group that she formed to proceed. This is the cyanotype before you wash the chemicals off and let it turn blue. And I found that I loved this. I started capturing these images before it's rinsed and turns blue. And then I was trying to find ways to put color underneath the underneath the cyanotype. So I would print photographs onto fabric and then do the cyanotype chemical on top of it and then wash it out. And then had a way to put color back into it. These are all experiments. More of that. And I guess this is the first talk I've ever done, but I think that there are so many mistakes I made along the way and so many experiments, and I have boxes and boxes of them, which I should basically throw out now. But I think that unless we don't try to make anything perfect, just do it. Just keep experimenting, make your mistakes. You can throw it out, you can do whatever, but you always learn from the process. So these, again, are just experiments that I did. And then it was COVID. It turned to be 2020. We were in shutdown, and I decided that taking walks and the plants were my friends. And I was so in love with these plants from collecting them from the cyanotypes. And I loved the idea of doing natural dyeing. So at that point during COVID, there were so many incredible classes to take online. So I got very involved with natural dyeing. And there's a company out in Seattle, Washington called Botanical Colors, and they were doing something called Feedback Friday. And every single Friday, they would have a huge presentation from various artists working in natural dyes. And so I learned so much. It was like getting a master's degree or something. They did about 150 of these, and they're still on their site, botanicalcolors.com. And so I took a class, and all of these are natural dye colors from one of the courses I took. And they're on velvets, they're on linens, they're on cottons, they're on silks. And just the range you can get from natural colors was just astounding to me. So the part that I liked about natural dyeing the most was how plants would impart color onto the fabrics. You had to do something called mordant the fabrics, which I think is a French word, means to bite. You had to soak the the fabric. In my case, I soaked it in alum to let the colors soak into the fabric. And so what you do in this process of bundle dyeing is you actually take the fabric, roll your plant material up into it, tie it up like a sausage almost, and steam it. So the lid, of course, would be on my pot, but this is during the course of steaming it. And when you unroll it, this is Rose of Sharon. I was basically during COVID finding any plant I could and dyeing it in this dye pot. But you can see how the plants impart color to the fabric, and I just found that so magical. So I started dyeing everything I could, just every single thing. Some of these are beets and, you know, hibiscus and lac and all sorts of dyes. And also, you can make the colors change by adding things to them. And in this case, I was adding iron to it. And I just loved when you add iron, it's called saddening just because the colors kind of do dull down. But there's a whole range of beautiful organic colors. I was just so taken by the beauty of natural colors. Also, all from the rust, from the iron. So then I thought, oh, it's COVID. Let me start making scarves and let me sell them. I was out of my mind because the stupid scarves take like 20 hours to make each. But I did have a good time and I made a whole bunch for friends and stuff. So that kind of calmed me down from that idea of going into business. But the beauty of the colors, this is actually marigolds, and when you mix it with the iron, you get these olive and yellow tones, which is pretty remarkable. So I went back to my cyanotypes, but this time I was collecting these plants that I loved and I was making friends with during COVID because you couldn't really have too much contact with people. So I would collect what was blooming and I would put them on the cyanotype prepared fabric and on a background. And I found that I was still loving the way the plants looked on the blue background. So then I learned to actually take a photograph of them, capture the image, and print it on archival photographic paper, cut it, and weave it and stitch it. So now I had something that was approaching something that you could call art because it was actually not Xerox paper. And this was foxgloves. Again, I put it on the velvet. I loved working with the velvet and cyanotypes. You took them off. You did have the impression of the foxglove, but what I really loved more was capturing the image of the foxgloves against the cyanotype background and stitching it. Hosta flowers, various weeds of the dandelion, a leaf from a dried amaryllis. And then I was wondering, how can I combine the interest of the cyanotypes and the natural dyed fabrics, my two new obsessions? So then I started looking at all the odd things that were out there in the countryside and their form and how they changed from week to week as they bloomed. And I was in love with photographing them against different backgrounds. But then I decided to combine my love of the plants with the natural dyed fabric. So I started making during COVID these little setups. These are horsetails that some of you might be aware of in their various stages of growth, and the twigs with the beautiful fungus against the iron soaked natural dyed fabric, various berries, ferns as they open, and then became the obsession of collecting the plants and pressing them. I mean, I just got extremely carried away with all of this, but they're quite beautiful. So my next experiments were taking these pressed flowers and putting them on top of my natural dyed fabrics and some netting on a light box, on a light pad, and making patterns and photographing them. These are some butterfly wings in there, and some of the plants in there are called skeleton. It's when a lot of the um, more meaty material of the leaf kind of erodes away and you just get the veins of the leaves. They're called skeleton. Um, so then I started, along with our crit group, I started uh, getting involved with Instagram and following people doing these alternative processes. Along with cyanotypes, there was one called lumens, and it's very much making a cyanotype. You've got a backer board, but instead of putting fabric or paper down and preparing it with the cyanotype chemicals, you take silver gelatin paper, like many of you might have gone into a dark room at some point in your life and made photographs. Well, you take this same paper and you can put materials on it. I'm using the plants, and you put it outside, expose it to the UV rays, and remove your plant materials, and you get this wonderful organic image. Now, somewhat like the cyanotypes, you have some control. You can control what paper you're using, what plants you're using. You cannot control the strength of the sun, the air temperature, um, and also the length of time you leave it out during different seasons will change. If you put it out in the middle of summer, it's going to bake to death, and it's going to condense and add the water to the paper. So these are hosta leaves and Solomon steel and the little seal and the little white flowers that come out in the beginning of spring. That is taking the plant materials off. But again, I liked it better with these lumens, photographing the plants, splicing them and weaving them. Here's anemone and ferns. This was baked at a much hotter temperature outdoors. You can see how it's shrinking away. And I captured an image and played around with it a little bit and the color changed. And this is it, and this is it woven. More of these poppies, more lumens. And then the older the photographic paper that you use, it has more silver in it. So I started buying paper on eBay that had some age to it, some vintage paper. And I haven't gotten very far in this, but you can see this is about 40-year-old Kodak paper. And the background turned black when I exposed my plants. So it's a whole realm I've yet to really fully explore, but it shows you how you can vary these techniques. The last technique, well, not the last, but I guess that is the last alternative process, is something called phytograms. And there's a teacher, Ann Eder, out there. She goes by the Instagram handle of Dark Flower. And she is part scientist and part natural photographer. She's incredibly generous in her teaching. And I learned a process called phytograms where you make a developer out of fragrant plants. In this case, you can see many herbs there with the cilantro and the thyme and all of that. Washing soda, vitamin C, and water, and you soak them for 24 hours. And this creates a plant-based developer. And this is what you use to do phytograms with. And there it is on film. It's like making a cyanotype, but you put it on film. So I started doing this with my plant materials again, and then putting silver and gold leaf on the back. Seaweed really changed the film. It must have added something out of the seaweed material that allowed me to get these very crazy colors. And then I started using my pressed plants. And the pressed plants don't impart as much color on the film, but I loved their look. And then last winter, I started photographing in Central Park in if anybody knows the North Woods area where a lot of people go birding. And I started weaving black and white photographs. This is not an alternative process, but I'm bringing the weaving back into my images of the snow in that area of the woods and creating different things. It was just a challenge to myself. And then the last thing I wanted to share is I wanted to try using these toy cameras, and they're plastic lenses, and they're about $39, and you get a square format photograph. So I started doing the ink aid transfers onto Japanese paper, Japanese tissue paper, and these are just a few. I've been documenting the water plant garden up at Wave Hill in the Bronx. If any of you know of that garden, I'm really in love with it. So I'm trying to see if I want to do diptychs or how I want to pair these things, or if I want to weave these things, or if I want to print them big or print them on Indian paper. I don't really know. And and that's it. So thank you very much.
Amazing. We will now take questions if you'd like to either unmute yourself or leave a comment or question in the group Zoom chat. I know there's already been so many comments in the chat.
I'll go ahead and unmute myself. Well, I guess I should put my video on so you can see my face. Thank you both. That was really great. I was fascinated by the plant-based phytograms as a developer. And I myself have done a method of stain painting using rust and tea and all kinds of objects, which comes out obviously very different than your plant colors, Teri, but they have a similar idea to it where you're laying objects on a surface and then you're letting it cook a certain way, and it all depends on the amount. In my case, it's salt or fresh water, or the amount of tea, or the amount of diluted tea, and how it affects it. So it's all chemical actions are happening. But you also mentioned the silver and gold leaf on the back. What did you mean by their silver and gold leaf, and how are you applying that in the process?
Oh, okay. I forgot to mention, what I do is once I get that film and I get my image of the plants on the film, then I capture an image, and then I will have a digital image into my computer, and I can adjust the color a little bit, and then I can print it out on vellum, which is a translucent material, and then I can back it with silver and gold leaf. So I forgot to tell you all that process. Thank you for bringing that
I
up.
see. So the silver, that's what I was trying to figure out how you were getting the multi-layered also look, which is beautiful. The one seeing one on top of the other. So it's because you're using vellum and the silver leaf is coming in from behind, is what you're
Correct.
saying.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Um, Other than that, just thank you very much. Great talk, presentation, and I love the use of figuring out all your own way of handling the materials, the experimentation. That's the most fun part of of working with materials. And I'm a big experimenter with materials, so it was great to watch. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much for was a really wonderful presentation. Doug, thank you as always. I love these. My question, I first want to commend you for mentioning your families. It's a really interesting way to make work. There's a million ways to do things. That's what we know as we age. But the specific um, process of working full time, raising a family, the various ways in which we do or do not get into our studios is always interesting to me. So I love that you mentioned that. Now, the question is, I find, and perhaps you do as well, that when you are driven by materials, there is more scientific exploration than, for instance, you train as a painter and you paint your whole life. Not that painters are not experimenting nonstop, but it makes me wonder, since both of you were, very deep into process, were you scientific as children?
I wasn't. I wasn't. No, I was that English and art kid, not that math or science kid. But I've always been that material person, always, always. Um, I have I'm I have collections that I have moved from home to home of burnt down matchsticks or run over construction gloves from 1978. So not Teri's much more. Teri is remarkable. She keeps notes and she writes them on index cards and on luggage tags. You know those wonderful kind of Martha Stewarty labely tags of how much she uses of solutions and how long she exposes things. And I am not that science person.
Carrie, what about you?
I wasn't scientific at all. I mean, I wasn't really great at school at all. I just like to make things and do art classes. So
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? I know we've gotten some more comments about how amazing the work is in the group in the chat, but anyone else want to unmute themselves or ask a question in the chat?
I just unmuted myself to say that it's interesting that I find anyway that there are more than one way of producing magic in this manner. One is the tools that are used to create the image in the first place, and the other is the printing aspect. At least talking about Teri's work in particular, but also uh, in Stacy's work taking all these fibers and integrating fibers together into something that's different. Um, but what engages me about the photography alternative process is that it's both impacted by how the images were originally conceived, let's say, or captured, as well as how they're then printed and transformed. Um, and I had parents who were both artists, and my mother, after many, many decades as an abstract expressionist painter, in her last decade or decade plus, switched to doing alternative process photography, starting at ICP.
Oh, wow.
And so I saw and generated mainly as pinhole, that is, lensless
Yeah,
photography.
yeah.
Um, so I'm a fan of the idea of alternative process. Even though I'm not a practitioner of that, I'm a very traditional painter, really.
How wonderful to have your mom embrace that. That's terrific. I've never done that.
Oh, you mean pinhole?
Yeah, never, never.
Right, but most of her printing, if you actually, I put her website in the chat, marciacshear.com. Yeah, the pinhole is essential for the beginning of the process, but then the cyanotypes, calotypes, et cetera, um, all hand printed were, the other part.
That's great.
Uh-huh. Also, altered SX70s.
Oh, the Polaroid, yeah. So
Yeah.
many people are doing that now too. I haven't gotten involved with the Polaroid. There's a woman by the name of Jerry Polin, and she does a lot of classes. She does incredible work with the Polaroid. There's so many things to try and explore.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I hope I live a long time.
Right.
Someone did just ask, what is the name of the woman Terry learned to make the plant-based developer?
Mm.
Yeah,
Oh, it's Ann Eder. I will spell that for you. Her website is ANNEEDER.com. And on Instagram, she goes by Dark DARC Flower. And she
Mm.
teaches through the Griffin Museum and Penumbra and occasionally at the Halide Project in Philadelphia. And I just adore her. She's very generous. She's very knowledgeable.
Mhm.
amazing. Thank you.
It's called a
Yeah,
phytograms,
yes.
spelled PHYTO.
Uh-huh, GRAM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any last questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, Stacy and Terry, and also thank you to our board of volunteers. And also, I'd like to announce that Monday, February 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern, ATOA will present Alyssa Pritzker, and she will present artists Gregory Slick and Nicola Lukey in When Education Leads, How Magazino Builds Meaning. Thank you and good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Everybody
you.
keep
Thank
warm.
you.
Elizabeth, get warmer.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you.